So it's a little bit ad hoc. So if I was going to title it, I was thinking I'd probably title it something like Them and Us. And they are different to us, and they don't like us. So we're going to try and split into two parts if we can. The first part is going to be about law and a little bit of the structure behind law, and then the next part is going to be about health. And they are fairly separate, but we will time them together because essentially I don't think anybody could really understand what health is all about unless they've got a stepping stone to know how law is involved as well, okay? So essentially in about 1933, there was a fellow called Colonel House, and this guy was an advisor to the Rockefeller Institute, and he put together this system called registry, okay? And in his notes, we've got all these things in diaries, and we can see letters belonging to these people. And in one of his letters to the institution, he basically said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing heavily here, he said, by the time anybody works out what we've done, it will be too late. And even if they do, there'll be such a small number of people that work this out that they can really do nothing, okay? So what we have is this really complicated system that's been put into place to keep us stupid. Okay? Or so, actually, stupid is the wrong word. Let's say ignorant, because you can be clever but ignorant at the same time. And ignorance means that we don't have knowledge. And if we can gain some knowledge, then we're in much better standing, and we can do something about the stuff being implied to us. Okay? And what I mean by that is so we can branch off into a few different things, but one of the things we can talk about is contract law. And in contract law, if something is implied, it means you've accepted a contract. Okay? If you say nothing, you've also accepted a contract. Okay? And the basis and the hoodwink or deception that's been put upon us is that these legalese constructs are created, and because we don't know anything about them and we misinterpret the language, we're stuck. So we're all ignorant. Okay? So essentially, registration, the root of the words, the English language was created to be deceptive. This is why lots of English words have lots of different meanings. And I'll give you some examples of this as we're going through here, okay? But registration, we can break that down. The root of that word is regis, which is royal, okay? And registration simply means that you are transferring ownership of anything to the royals, okay? And that registration bounces off something called the crown. So in effect, the crown, that's a whole other conversation that's absolutely huge to get into, owns absolutely everything. And the way they own everything is through registration. So essentially, as soon as we register anything, we're saying to the crown or to the kings or to our rulers, here, it's yours now. And then once we hand it over, we get delivered another contract back, which is a license. So who's got a Microsoft computer or an Apple computer? You agree to those terms and conditions. You got 10 pages. I don't know who can read those pages and then even work out what it means with the way language is twisted. Okay, so you give so as soon as you register your computer, you give it back to the company by registering it, and then you accept a license which has all sorts of things in there which can change at any time. Okay, so again, we don't know these things, and we got to start looking at things and being accountable. I know probably a little bit more than some people about it, but even the stuff I'm telling you guys about, I know an absolute fraction of everything there is about this. It's such a vast, vast area, and I'm like a baby in nappies when it comes to my depth of knowledge in this. Okay, so the next thing is this legal system is based on an occult system, okay? And when we look at law, the very first law that should be there is the law of the land, or God's law actually supersedes that. And God's law can be fairly simple. It includes the 10 Commandments. And if you want to take it back a step further, it can only, I guess, one of the simplest law would be do no harm to anybody else. Everything else can spring off that. If you think about it, if somebody's harmed and you're not doing harm, that's the only law technically that we need. Okay? Then we have the biblical law. There's hundreds of different laws. You have commercial law, you got all sorts of different laws. So the biblical law underwrites everything. Underneath that, you got the law of the land, which essentially is very directly related to biblical law, and then you start branching out off the law of the land. So what we're talking about is a thing called common law, and common law is the way we can use the principles of the law of the land to work within the legal system. And the legal system is what we are concerned about and what we should be concerned about. And this really comes from biblical times. This whole legal system has been set up then. Then we had these big jumps in the legal system, and it branched out and it branched out and it branched out. And the real serious damage started getting done in around the 1600s all the way through to current times. Okay? So, and the guys who don't like us, the guys at the top, we have no idea who they are. People like Bill Gates, people like the guys who own the mines, all these guys are just, these are very, very low level. So people at the top who created all this stuff, we have no idea who they are. And what they've done is they've created this convoluted system to keep us trapped, okay? And all of us, different people, are trying to work out just little avenues about how to go through the system, how to work it out. So when I say that it's actually an occult system, it is based on a system of very old lore, which is based on things like magic. And I'm going to explain, it sounds a little bit weird at the moment how this whole so-called system that's been constructed so well is set up that is based on magic. But again, you're going to get the idea very soon about why I'm going to say that. When we're talking about magic, karma is really important, okay? And it seems that these systems are directly linked into karma, okay? And karma essentially means that if you do something bad, some kind of energy will come back and it'll equal itself out. And the way this system is constructed is that these guys don't want bad karma. A way of not getting bad karma is if you agree. You're giving your power away. You're giving your will. You're giving your strength away. So karma, from these guys' point of view, is equaled out. Okay? So they can do whatever the hell they want to us. They can put all these legalities in place that are actually very harmful and that they're against the law. And just by the fact that we don't know it, we're accepting. So we have to stand in our power more and start getting our heads around how duplicitous this system is and what we're getting ourselves into. Okay, so there's again a good few numbers of these dictionaries, but one of the most important ones, and one of the ones that Shay's referenced last time, is a thing called Black's Laws Dictionary, okay? And what that does, that spells out the meanings of words, but it spells it out in legalese. And legalese looks like English. It's got the same words as English, but it's not. The words actually mean other things in legalese, okay? And this is the deception. Your barristers know this, your solicitors know this, but again, even with defense and prosecution, they're both registered by the Crown. So you're getting a barrister in or a solicitor in to fight whatever civil case, thinking that you can have a win. They're both working for the same company. So this is why so many people lose money in court. So many people lose cases. All this is a way of wealth extraction, taking our money and delivering it to the people who are a lot richer than us, okay? So it's not a fair system. It's built to take your money off you. Something of note, our original form of English should be using no capitals, okay? And if we think of the word capitals, we can look at that word capitalistic. And capitalistic essentially means a system based on capital letters. And capital letters, once we start using them, change the meanings of stuff, okay? Capital letters relate to corporations. As a living person, if I'm going to spell my name as a living person, I should have a small d in my name, D-E-N-N-I-S, small, all small. As soon as I capitalize it, what I'm doing is I'm identifying a corporation, which is me, okay? And Shay mentioned the last time, a corporation is corpse, oration, talking. So what I'm doing is I'm deciding, if I'm not careful, if I'm identifying myself as Mr. Dennis, Mr. O'Connor, whatever it is, I'm actually agreeing that I'm representing a corpse and I'm no longer a living person. As soon as I'm representing a corpse, I am in the corporate system and I've agreed essentially to corporate law. Okay? These are so many catches with these systems. And to say, I'll segue a little bit every so often, once you're in these contract and corporate systems, you have this word called liability. And at all times, those guys are trying to push liability onto us. And if we're accepting the liability, we're giving away our power. We're agreeing to absolutely anything. And we look what's happening with things like vaccines at the moment. This all consent. This is why the consent is so important. Okay? The brilliance of the system is that even though those guys have put all these structures in place, because people aren't aware and we've given away our power, these guys have knowing, useful idiots working for them, okay? So even a policeman, if he breaks the law, which is here, because of legality, which is here, and gets found out, even in his contract, it says that we're not going to hold responsibility. We've trained you, and if I want to write to redress about assault, okay, they will drop him like a hotcake. Okay, so the organization is almost immune to just about everything. So these guys have covered things so perfectly. It's an incredible system. Quite genius. Sorry? Yeah, sure.
I
Yeah.
don't want to interrupt.
No, not at all. Yeah.
I spoke to quite a high senior police constable on the weekend, and I actually said to him, they all have to get vaccinated, double vax, to actually work, keep their jobs, which is what they did. But I said, so where do you get your information on what's happening? He basically said, it's just from the bosses. So they have they don't even know law.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't even get trained in law, like even the corporate law,
absolutely,
let alone common law. And they just go, no, the bosses just tell us. Like, you don't even have to be a police
absolutely
person.
You know,
that shocked me. That actually shocked me.
Nuremberg trials, I was ordered to do it. That doesn't stand up. Okay,
but they don't even know.
And this is why, if we have some of that knowledge, we can educate these guys. And I think the thing to point out about now is we're in a sandbox, okay? And a lot of people have tried to use these systems unsuccessfully. They've gone to jail. They've lost their car. They've had stuff taken off them. So the big point I'd like to make here is, first of all, we got to know about it. Secondly, realize that maybe it's not going to work successfully for you, but at least if you know about it, you're way further ahead of the game. And the other massive thing is the more people that know about it, we can actually start to make changes and question stuff.
That's it. Yeah. For now, we might lose a little bit.
Yep.
It's better now than 50 years ago. The more we're going to be, more we're going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you start challenging this kind of stuff, you're really backing people into a corner. And again, you got to do so in relation to your own skill level, or how much you're prepared to actually step up, or how much you're prepared to lose as well. So it's a little bit of a tough journey going down this direction. Okay. But again, I think we're not necessarily doing it for ourselves. We're probably doing it for other people around us. So again, great thing you talked about the police. So what's police? Police, the root of that word is policy. Okay, so it's a policy officer. Where does office work? Officers work in offices. Okay, the police system is a corporatized system. It's a private system. So we have two identities with police. You have a constable, and these guys swear an oath to defend and protect you, okay? But that's only one role that they're working in. Their other role is a policy officer, okay? So they're working for the Crown Corporation indirectly, and their job is to take things from you and give it back to the corporation. I'll just hold it for a sec, okay? That's their job. That's what they do, okay? So it's essentially theft, okay? Yep.
Oh my God. And I said to him, so who do you work for? Do you work for the people, or who do you work for? Oh, he said, we work for the government.
Absolutely.
That was his first
absolutely. And these guys swear an oath to the Queen.
And then you
okay?
asked about the oath.
Yeah, they swear an oath.
I'm like, they're just so indoctrinated.
We'll get to health again in a second. Actually, how am I doing for time? We're flowing okay? Are we 20 past, so 20 minutes? Cool. Yeah, I might, as I said, there'll be a little bit of kind of all over the place, but there's a few things to kind of put in here. So again, you got a policy officer you're interacting with. Okay, so you got to define that relationship when you're interacting with a policy officer. Okay, the way you define it is you ask the policy. First of all, it's identity. As soon as you identify yourself in capitals, you've agreed to contract with that person. Okay, what's your name? Are you Mr. Ryan Douglas? As soon as you say yes, the Mr. is caps, the Ryan is caps, the Douglas is caps, you are agreeing that now I'm conversing with this person in legalese in a corporate system. Anything afterwards, you're going to get trapped in a contract. Okay? One of the best ways of police trapping people in contracts, and these guys don't even realize they're doing it, they're taught to use these words deliberately, is the words, do you understand? Okay? People probably know this. If I agree to understand you, I'm agreeing to stand under you. I'm agreeing that you are in control. And whatever contract you put on me, I'll accept. This is ignorance. This is how we get trapped in things, okay? So the first thing that, as kind of some little things to consider, and I wouldn't suggest you do this until you look a lot more into it, but this is just the door opening for you guys to step through and have a look at this stuff. But when you're interacting with anybody, you can probably start thinking about things like, Dennis, are you referring to the living person? Yep.
Just with the understanding that, that's coming from the law dictionaries, so you've got to sort of realise the legalese, like just so people understand, they're talking about the law dictionary.
So this is what I said before. Black's Laws Dictionary is one of the best dictionaries that underpins the use of this language. Okay, words like exclusion, inclusion. Inclusion is in there. It's quite incredible when you think about all these political things that were the political correctness stuff. Inclusion means to the exclusion of all others. To the exclusion of all others. So when we hear these little, beautiful New World Order sayings, inclusivity, this, it's all bullshit. These guys are manipulating language, and we're saying, oh great, we're ticking off, and we're agreeing to be repressed. We're agreeing to tyranny.
Another thing also, when the cops are asking us an ID, we have our name in capital. If we give the ID, already we are entering the contract, the driver license and everything. And so that's why it's always important to know that within their law, unless we commit a crime, we don't have to show the ID. Okay. For example, in my car, I have all the, like the court case that happened and everything. So can I have the ID, please? No. Did I commit a crime? No. And I show them the thing. And I say, now you need to do whatever you need to do. But I'm not going to show you my ID. It's up to you. So once we give it, apparently, sorry.
That's good. So there's again, where everybody's manipulating. So we, I guess, have to counter manipulate stuff. So with the ID, for example, as soon as you offer to give your ID to a policy officer, you've agreed to a contract. Just there. You've literally agreed. So what we have to do is we have to think about rebutting contracts. And the best way to rebut a contract is to ask a question. And a little key for this is the word asking. You split that up. As king. The reason you're as king is because you're standing in your power and you can't get recontracted. You can offer contract yourself and then see what the policeman says. And if they're ignorant, they could have accepted a contract. You could say, I am standing as Dennis right here. I don't wish to contract you. I rebut your contract, but I'd like to offer you a contract. My hourly rate is $950 an hour. How long is this going to take? Okay, you've offered him a contract. If you record that, that is admissible in court.
And this is something that we should have. I have a friend in Ravenshaw. He has a fee schedule with his name and everything, and every time he shows up to the cops, okay, now you're entering the fee schedule and everything for trespassing on my time and everything. So that's something that maybe we should have, all of us. I don't have it yet. But that's something we should maybe.
I think the first step is knowing that these are possibilities. Then the next step is to.
I'm a little bit concerned about, personally, from my own angle, I'm a bit concerned about not bridging that gap. Because to a couple that's coming up and they're asking us for a license, they're considering it as part of their everyday job. They're not actually thinking about it on the level that they're making us uncomfortable, that they're using these words or any of those things that we're sharing here. So I think maybe there's a way that we can do it in a way that doesn't challenge them and make the problem bigger and make us look like a bunch of dickheads.
So again, to be really clear, when I'm talking, I'm obviously trying to deliver something to you guys, but when you're dealing with somebody, you can be polite. You don't have to be rude or aggressive. All this can be a polite and honorable exchange. This is why judges are called your honor, because they're implied to be standing in honor, even though probably a lot of them are not. Okay, but we also have that right. We have that right to stand in honor ourselves.
Is there a way that we can just say, "Am I under arrest?"
There actually is a thing. There actually is a very, very good line. The line is sorry, constable. Okay, are you acting in your oath? Yes, blah, blah, whatever it is. Do I retain my right to remain silent? It's a yes or no question. Everybody has the right to remain silent. So then the only answer possibly has to be a yes. Has to be a yes. In which case, then where have you been? Where are you going? Who are you? Sorry, officer, constable. You did say I have the right to remain silent. Is that correct? But when you remain silent, this is about delivering information to that person. You can still ask questions and stay in king, and you can still recontract, even though you're being silent, because you haven't volunteered information. You haven't contract. So again, depending on how you look at that, they are opening themselves up for assault, personal liability, all that kind of stuff. Again, it takes a bit to try and follow this through and do it. But the more people who start getting aware of it, we'll get somebody in the mix who will actually step up, and they'll make it way easier for everybody else, which has happened with precedents and cases before. Okay? Yep.
Just why you want to say you're staying silent, because acquiescence in assent.
Yep.
So they can, if you don't answer, they can take the due agreement.
Yep.
So that's tacit agreement.
Absolute tacit agreement. Absolutely.
So if you do say, do I have the right to remain silent? And then you can say, if they say yes, you go, well, I'd like to invoke that right. And they can't take that you're agreeing with some of their other statements because you invoke that right. So they can't say, oh, they accept it because they had the chance to stand up and say something.
There's always some ways around it. I mean, the other thing as well is when the cop gets angry or gets aggressive or whatnot, then you're always asking a question again. So just to reiterate, you're telling me that you're going to drag me out my car, smash the window, take me off to the station. As soon as you get any kind of threat whatsoever, okay, you mark it down and you say to the police officer, okay, I'll give you whatever information you want because now I'm under duress. Bang, everything from that point on is inadmissible in court. Okay? So there's lots of little maneuvers we can make. All that still depends on the judge. When you get there, he might hate you and he might put you in contempt. So it's not straightforward and black and white. But again, the motive here is for us to know that this stuff exists. These are or can be our rights. And hopefully somebody has a bright idea and we can make more progress with this. Okay, we'll kick on. So in around 1666, I think, we had the Great Fire of London. And in fact, we had great fires everywhere. It's the most interesting thing if you start looking at ancient history. Type in Great Fire of and put in any friggin' town and there was a great fire, okay? But the one in London is the one that we are interested in because lots of information about births and deaths disappeared. And this is when these guys who don't like it came up with the idea of forming this registry system, okay? So like everything, these guys always do things for two reasons. They have a outward reason and they got a kind of a shitty reason that's going to mess it up. And the outward reason was to identify people who were missing in the Great Fire of London and to record births of the people and the people who were alive, okay? But the real reason was basically to create a slavery system. Okay, so once these birth registrations came into play, the way they're set out, if you read them, especially the English ones, are set out that you are registering your birth, like we said before, you are giving your child to the government, to a corporation, okay? So we've kind of sold our souls. As soon as the governments get this piece of paper, what happens is they create a bond with it. The root of the word bond is bondage. Okay, as soon as we're born, the figure changes depending on how you work out current value system and how, when you're born, et cetera, et cetera. But roughly, when we're born, our births are registered and we get bonds on how much we can work for the government, and it stands at roughly $2 million. Each of us has those bonds. So these guys are double dipping, okay? They are borrowing against the fact that we're too stupid. We got 7 years, by the way, 7 years to challenge that. Okay, and after the age of 7, we're considered lost at sea, okay? And once we're considered lost at sea, if I'm lost at sea, I cannot be alive in a courtroom, okay? I have to be dead in a courtroom because I'm already presumed lost at sea, unless I'm a living person. That's a whole other avenue. So this is where we have the word summons. Summons is an occult ritual. You're raising somebody from the dead. This is what they do in court. Please rise. They're summoning a spirit in court. This is an occult system. We need to be aware of this, okay? It overlaps again with the maritime system, and this is why we have all this maritime language. It's no coincidence that we get berthed. What does a ship do? It pulls into a berth, okay? Another name for berth is a dock. Who berths us? A doctor, okay? It's in our face, okay? So when you train as a solicitor, you cross the bar. It's a sandbar, okay? We pay for our debt. We pay for our liability with currency. What does a river do? It's a current. It flows. It's a form of energy, okay? And then all of a sudden, we can't meet these illegal, fraudulent contracts that have been put on us, and we go bankrupt. The riverbank fails, okay? And then we're penalized because we don't know any better. So you can see how this language just throws open this massive, system that nobody's heard of, nobody's aware of. Incidentally, back to the babies. Just one sec, just back to the babies. You got a baby, they put a heel print on the paper when they're born. It's the sole of your foot. They've taken your soul, okay?
And it's registered.
It's registered.
Vatican.
Correct? Yeah.
How is it in other countries and other languages?
So English is the language of deception. So this is why English is the international language. Because the
last language that was invented on the planet as well.
Yeah. So the corporate system had deliberately created English for this reason, to have us all blind and stupid. You can't do the deception as well in just about every other language. It doesn't work. English is a corporate language, a language of deception. How are we going so far? There's a lot of stuff here. Okay. Yeah. With time for questions. Yeah.
There's so many great things here. Thank you.
That's okay.
I explained to my 13-year-old because he's quite aware of
Yeah.
it. So I said to him with school's a whole other thing.
Yep, absolutely.
About understand.
Yeah.
And I explained what understand means.
Yeah.
So I said, just get used to saying the word I comprehend.
Absolutely.
I comprehend what you're saying.
So we're just hearing here, I comprehend as opposed to understand, which is a better way of saying it.
Just
Absolutely.
use a different word
Yeah.
and stop using the word
Absolutely.
understand, just to keep it
But let's
simple.
throw some others at you.
Yeah.
Good morning. What do we do at a wake or funeral? We mourn. We've fallen into the system with the language. Good morning. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
I wish you well. Well.
Going down a well. You know, we work all the way through the week. No energy. So at the end of the week, we are weakened. We're in a slave system. We're in a slave system. And words are delivered. So just so you finish. So we got to remember, what do we do with words? We spell them. Words are of a vibrational frequency. We are casting spells when we talk. These guys know this. They have created the system to keep us hypnotized and put us in a spell. And as a result, we're all stuck in a slave system.
The statistics all over the world show that in the English country's language, more people are dying on the weekends than other countries where they don't speak English. So, yes, we curse ourselves and we spell cast on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And this is a fact.
And again, there's actually legitimate science behind this. And when I say legitimate, I mean their science. But their science actually validates this. You can see absolutely, quantum effects on physics, absolutely. So in 1666, there was a thing called, forget this one, so cest KV, okay? And this means for the benefit of another, okay? So this is the whole system that underwrites what we're doing with our birth certificates, okay? So basically we have essentially been registered, our parents have sold our souls to a corporate system for the benefit of others. The only people who benefit are the guys at the top, okay?
We're supposed to be the beneficiary, but they make us the trustee.
Correct.
Like in court,
Yep.
They become liabilities. So,
Absolutely. And that goes down to contract law, where you have your secretaries and your debtors and your creditors, which is absolutely spot on. Yeah.
And the more you know about trust law,
Correct.
it's easy to understand, but
Yep.
it's still complicated.
It's deliberately created so.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about this. Even just a few other things about the week. When you're working for somebody, you earn something. What do you put ashes in? Somebody who's dead. They're in an urn. Okay? It's all corporate language. It's all systems meant to trap us. And then even to flick back to kind of a bigger kind of thing, all these systems, the legal system, the corporate system, the health system, they're all owned by just about 3 entities. And over that, the Crown owns everything else. So have you heard of Vanguard, BlackRock, Blackstone? Those companies own about 99% of the whole world, thereabouts. Okay? And then you could argue that the Queen owns everything, owns the whole lot of that. Okay? Right. Interesting. So I'll just add a few notes before we go into the health stuff here. So again, the term we give to that way of writing and spelling is a thing called dog Latin, okay? Or actually English comes from, it's got a Latin origin, some of the basis of our words. So they're always telling us, dog Latin, we use dog Latin, what are we? We're dogs. Keep them in the kennel, you know? Pat them on the head every so often, give them a bit of a reward. This is what's happening to us.
Can you also say that dog is God backwards?
Yes, I love dogs. Yeah, but we're talking about those guys. We're not talking about us. Yeah. So let's see where we got to. Okay. So with that in mind, would anybody disagree that those guys who created that system are working for us? Okay. These guys, would you say, this is my opinion, it's subjective now. I think that they literally hate us. They want to destroy us. Okay? Now, if we consider that it's those same guys that created the banking system, that created the health system, it kind of throws open a little bit of a rabbit hole and a little bit of a door here, okay? And we've all been indoctrinated that the doctor is some kind of untouchable figure, okay? We've been hooked into this spell that the doctor is now. The doctor is the priest, is the high priest of the new cult. The new cult is medicine and scientism, okay? And what a lot of people do, Emma asked me to touch on this, which I find is a fascinating story, but essentially the thing that destroyed people getting well in humanity was a thing called the Flexner Report, which came together in about 1913, okay? And this was put together by a fellow called Albert Flexner, who was involved with the Carnegie Society. So Carnegie, Dale Carnegie, Think Rich, Go Rich, I think was his famous book back in the day. Now, he basically wrote a lot of that stuff about energy and how energy works. He had people like the Astors and the Rockefellers and these massive families, and he went around to try and find out how they got rich. So one of the Rockefellers was his mentor. This is where the Carnegie Institute basically enmeshed with the Rockefeller Institute. They sponsored this thing called the Flexner Report by a fellow called Albert Flexner. And Albert Flexner's brother happened to be the head of the Carnegie Institute at the time. No nepotism here, okay? So if you're commissioning a report to sell something, it's likely that you might want a favorable result for what you're trying to do, okay? Now, I don't know if you know, but the Rockefellers were the magnates behind the mining and the oil industry at the time, more so petrochemical industry, okay? So you create these absolutely filthy poisons, you package everything in them, and you sell these poisons to as many people as you can. So no surprise, sorry, that the basis of nearly every single medicine we have is petrochemically based, okay? And it's for good reason. It's for good reason. So the Flexner Report, they commissioned Mr. Young Alberts, and he went around to find out which medicines worked well and which didn't, okay? Now, Rockefeller had this idea about allopathic medicine, which is our current medical system now. He wanted that to be number one because he owned it. Guess what Flexner found out? That his system, the allopathic system, was the only one of merit. All these other modalities were criticized, they were blasted, they were scandalized. This is where the word quackery came from, okay? And at the time, I think the statistics were before 1913, about 70% of all medicine was alternative to the allopathic system, if not more. So the medical schools before 1913, the medical system as we see it now, looked nothing like it does today, okay? Off the back of the Flexner Report, all these other modalities are shit. They're going to kill people. Chiropractors will break your spine. This person's a kook because they believe in energy. These guys were lambasted. Hundreds of chiropractors, homeopaths, and a few other people were thrown into jail off the back of the Flexner Report. And off the back of the Flexner Report, we people, humanity, were coerced into, and through lobbying and through court systems and through Congress as well, to make guidelines for the new system. So the guidelines for the new system were, we will have to look at what you do and make sure it's okay. We will train you, we will register you, and we will deliver the information to you. Is it any wonder that every friggin' clinical study seems to suggest that medications are great? The figures, I think, about 10 or so years ago, and I'm sure they haven't changed very much, are that 70% of all clinical studies in America are not published. They're not published, 70%, because they have a suggestion or a thesis that something might not work. So it's only the ones that show that a medical system works that we take. So I've got a massive friggin' company, and I want to produce the next new drug, and I say to you, listen, how much for a result about this part of this molecule, blah, blah, and you say, hey, listen, 20 million? I go, okay, sounds good. What will you do? And you might say, listen, I'm an expert in this area. I know a lot about this molecule. I think it's a little bit dodgy. I'm not too sure if this result will work in your favor. I go, okay, thanks for your time. Hey, Shay, I need this study. This is the molecule. And Shay goes, how much? 20 million. Whoa, his eyes light up. What's the result of this study going to be like, Shay? I know a lot about this molecule. It's the best thing ever. I'll do your study. And studies are formed off the back of this to create situations where you get favorable results. This is how medical science works. If you want to dig into this, there's a guy called Professor John Ioannidis. He's incredible. He works at Stanford University. He wrote what at the time was the most read medical paper ever. And the title of the paper was something along the lines of why 95% of all clinical research is seriously flawed or fraudulent. I'm paraphrasing with that heading, but you'll find it fairly easily. It's a mind-blowing study. essentially all our medical research is bullshit. Okay, and when you start, you look at the biggest medical system in the world is the U.S. medical system, and the U.S. have got the sickest population in the world. This is no coincidence here. It's very straightforward. So where are we up to now? So essentially, the system then, this Flexnor system, or the system put out by the Flexnor report off the back of it, was also the same system that made medical journals. This is where medical journals came from, okay, to promote the sales of petrochemicals and medicines, okay? So essentially, you got these big guys at the top. They come along, they go, okay, we want to sell some stuff. Why don't we make the whole system? This is the word for it's called racketeering. It's when you control the origin, it's when you control the supply, it's when you control everything all the way through a process. It's called racketeering. These guys are racketeers, okay? They make their money off us getting sick. There is no value to have well customers for the medical system. No value whatsoever, okay? And as soon as we start locking these things into play, we can make better decisions for our health, okay? This is again, as a segue, there was a report, I think the New England Journal of Medicine in about 2005 or so, that showed that our checkups in men were directly related to higher mortality. This is a published study in a peer-reviewed paper, so the more you get checked up and the more experiments, I guess, that you have done to you, your mortality goes up. So the conclusion of the study was, maybe don't go for medical checkups. Okay? This is actually a peer-reviewed science. Okay. So once we start kind of poking around at that kind of stuff, it kind of makes sense that we think of some of these three-letter organizations especially, they may not be working for us, they may not be on our side, okay? So you know, before I fell down the rabbit hole, I'm going, oh, well, you know, we got the FDA and we got the CDC, we got the TGA. These guys were created by the industry. There's one of these three letters in America that I think could be the TGA, but one of these guys, their name before the name change was the chemical society or the chemical lobby or something. These guys were working for the chemical industries, and then they turned into the guys who are telling us what we should take and what we shouldn't take. So it's no surprise with all this COVID stuff that nobody's talking about vitamin D, one of the most important hormones / vitamins in the world. It's so vital. Not only that, we're told the opposite. Stay indoors.
Yeah, because of cancer.
Stay indoors. Absolutely friggin' incredible. Micronutrients. All our food's micronutrient deficient. You know, there's a little meme out there which I think is incredibly accurate. So the guys who can't bring clean water to any living country, and they ignore things like child rape and sex and child trafficking and all these things, but they want to all fix this with a vaccine. Okay, so it doesn't take much critical thinking to realize that these guys are not our friends, they're working against us, okay? So it's very much related to that corporate system, it's related to money, okay? But it's also, I think, about keeping us in a lower state of vibration, a lower state of energy, okay? Because if we are not healthy and well, we can't function at a better level.
I totally agree with you about the energy. And is that around the time 1913 or just before that they got rid of Tesla?
So Tesla was kind of in around that early 1930 system, but there was so many, that's another whole fascinating thing, so I can't touch too much on it. But yeah, essentially Tesla was on the right track.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Tesla was quite incredible.
Energy,
never taught at schools. Never taught about it in schools. It's quite incredible. So we're being fed these absolutely bullshit narratives. Okay. Just lost my train of thought a little bit then. That's okay. Oh yeah, of course. So these guys are controlling all these parts of these systems. So now, is it any wonder that things that can work can be demonized? Okay, and it's quite funny. You look at things like the placebo effect. The placebo effect is probably the most important thing that we can ever be aware of. It can cure everything. All it takes is suggestion. There's a guy, for anybody's interested, to write down a fellow called Irving Kirsch, who did studies on the placebo. They are absolutely mind-blowing, okay? But if we can cure ourselves with our minds, medical industry is going to miss out, okay? Things like fluoride in our water. Fluoride's a byproduct of aluminium. You've got it being studies from Germany. They used to put it in prisoners of war's water to keep them docile. It's a neurotoxin, okay? But it makes the outside, the enamel of our teeth, a little bit harder. And even that science is very questionable, very, very questionable. The studies that put that out, the same process happened.
These guys use a really weird little cohort of people. They went, ooh, their teeth are harder, let's put it in all the water. Now we don't have to dump our poison in a strange place, plus we're making money from it. Absolutely incredible, okay? Australia, somebody here found that the vitamin B17 in apricot seeds is a potent cancer buster. It's illegal because it can cause nephritis, okay? Boron, look at something called the boron conspiracy. Boron is one of the most important ingredients that we can have in our plants and our food. One of the most important, we're all boron deficient. There's a thing called the boron conspiracy. This guy was curing all sorts of diseases, especially rheumatoid arthritis back in the 80s. He was pressing these tablets himself, and word of mouth got around. He got absolutely slammed with orders. He went to a pharmaceutical group and asked if they could make the tablets for him. Within weeks, he was shut down. And boron was illegal. It was a poison. That's why it's in the poisonous area in your detergents. It should be in every plant in high quantities. This is boron. We never get told about this stuff. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll try and wrap it up, and then we'll just get a few questions. But again, we can have a very clear, I think, belief and understanding that the information that we're getting is heavily corrupted, and it's done for financial motive. That's the first point. The second point is, by not being ignorant, we can do something about it, not just for our health, but for the health of others, okay? And the third is that everything that underpins a whole lot is this fake, duplicitous common law system, or not common law system, this maritime law system that underpins all of this. So I think to kind of, wrap it up, we've got stuff that we can be aware of that can put us further. Okay, and I'll dig deeper. I think I've arranged for Emma to maybe come back and just have a deeper dig now into some of that stuff, because there's a lot of stuff there. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the chat.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.